Do you remember that moment on the Oprah interview when Meghan shared those very distressing thoughts about her own life? That it was too hard to continue? Well, let's analyze the clip that points specifically to the night she had that conversation with Harry and see what can we spot. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and it would be great if you join us by just liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it. So this was at the Royal Albert Hall, and the event was the premiere of Totem by the Cirque du Soleil, and even if there is footage of them arriving at the venue and greeting everyone, it's this clip where we can see all the emotions involved. Let's take a first look and see what can you spot. Now, we suppose that Meghan was faking that joyful emotion, as right before going to that event, she had talked to Harry about those thoughts she had about her own life. But in the clip that you just saw, I think the most relevant gesture is how Harry sort of bends to the man to his right. The man is Daniel Lamar, who is the CEO of the Cirque du Soleil, and he was kind of the host to the Sussexes that night. It's also important to remember that at this point his company also benefited Harry's charities, so that's one of the reasons they were attending that premiere. But even if there is a common cooperation to a virtuous goal, I really don't make much sense of that strong leaning of Harry towards him, especially when at the same time he leans towards Lamar. We as spectators have the feeling that he's leaning away from Meghan. Well, in fact, it's like that Boston song, more than a feeling, because he's actually leaning away from Meghan, and I'm sure that no woman would feel comfortable if their husband, with their spotlight on their faces, do that smooth criminal bending in the opposite direction. I think he was trying to show some deference towards Lamar, but in fact it felt odd. Leaning in body language is always an exchange of power. You lean into the most powerful or dominant person in a group or a couple, and the fact that Lamar is much shorter than Harry made that effect much more evident. I think Meghan's smile was genuine enough, even if, allegedly, she was feeling really bad that night. But some things never changed, like the bum cradle with both hands and Harry's fidgeting of his jacket. But it's on the next clip where things take a strange turn. Well, this deference towards Lamar was much more adequate. Harry gets closer to him, they shake hands, lean into each other and keep eye contact. That makes so much more sense than whatever Harry tried to do leaning into him in the previous clip. Now what happens next is interesting. Well, first Harry touches his belly again. I don't know if it's some kind of mirroring of Meghan's bum cradling, but whatever. And then Meghan reaches out to his hand. At this point, anyone that is watching Meghan for the first time, besides being lucky, anyone watching Meghan for the first time will think that she's reaching out to her husband for help getting seated, right? But if you watch my video on her pregnancy, you remember that up to 8 months, she could squat and stand up all on her own, and that's way more difficult than what we're watching here. So since we already have a baseline of Meghan's pregnant body language, we can safely assume that she really did not need to hold her husband's hand for physical support, because she really didn't need that. Then it must have another meaning, and that other meaning is hidden in the way she curls her wrist towards herself. Because if you're reaching for someone's hand for support, you're going to keep your wrist in this way to leverage your wrist joint. But Meghan instead curls her wrist toward herself. I suggest that whenever you have the opportunity, ask someone to try it. Try to grab their hand in order to get support and see what your wrist naturally does. I'm sure it is not going to do this, but instead it's going to remain in the outward position. So both her body language baseline and the position of her wrist tells us that she did not reach out for Harry's hand for support, but it was more of a possessive gesture. By the way, I don't know what royal protocol says about this, but I feel not very manly that Harry began to sit down before Meghan and actually sat down before Meghan. If you want to truly support your woman, in all cases you help her sit down first and then you sit down. That was really odd. Then a split second after that, Harry's lips are incredibly tense and pressed together. He feels really bad at that moment, really frustrated, and it's obvious somehow his mind is somewhere else, and he's so distressed that he even has to let go of Meghan's hand. Notice how Meghan even tries to look at him to see if everything is okay, and Harry's face is anything but that. Well, if they had that conversation before going there, maybe that's why Harry has this face, right? But it gets worse. Well, that was a bit uncomfortable to watch. I zoom in on Harry's face because this is a great example of a person whose feelings are manifesting as actual pain. The problem is that we exactly don't know which pain was he feeling at that moment. Maybe he had gone too far with enchiladas at lunch, or it was that he did not like that spotlight on his face, or whatever Meghan allegedly told him before. And speaking of Meghan, I'm really trying to build my empathy here to find something, anything that connects with that conversation they had. That she couldn't take it anymore, but in that gesture of Harry just giving his hand so she could apply her full claw, and then her usual victory face, and Harry's low on iron face, it seems really odd. Yeah, of course, there's always the easiest explanation, that Meghan is an actress and Harry doesn't have a clue on how to manage his own feelings. And that's why faces like this, looking upward, twisting his lips, happen so often. If that's so, well, I must acknowledge that Meghan is a really good actress. But if you ask me, that final smile has all the signals of a genuine smile to me. I bought it completely. Now, the actual question that I have regarding this is that with all these factors that we've seen so far, we can say that Meghan knows that she's got the acting chops, because she can put on that face even if she's feeling like not very interested about keeping on breathing. But at the same time, she knows that her husband has a very hard time processing this kind of emotions. And I really would like to read your opinion about this. If you know that you're about to go to a public event and okay, you feel like hell, but you know that you've got the means to hide that, would you have that conversation exactly before, knowing that your husband is going to expose his own feelings like this? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about not sharing what you feel. I think a couple should always have full disclosure about that. What I'm talking is that timing is also paramount about this. Especially if you have any empathy for how your partner could react to what you're going to share with them. Maybe that's why, in hindsight, after the Oprah interview, we can see this event in a totally different light. This is not about if they had that conversation. We assume that they did. The real question is, was right before a public engagement the best moment to do it? No easy answer, so I really would like to know what's your opinion on this. If you want to refine your observation skills, all you have to do is download my 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas and it will always be a pleasure, my body language buddies. Much love and bliss.